All right. Awesome. So hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today and for coming out to my presentation today. I will be discussing library yoga, my experiences with virtual yoga programming at the Brock University Library. So a little bit about the agenda for today. I'll be discussing why library yoga, a little bit about me, my motivation, sort of how library yoga came to be. Then I'll dive into the program itself, how it was designed, scheduled, promoted. And then I'll dive into the research survey. So I've conducted a little bit of research about library yoga because I've been interested in finding out how it was actually received by the academic community. And then I will move ahead into some thoughts for the future, ideas towards future wellness programming and partnerships. So first of all, I'll introduce myself. I've already, thank you, Marta, for introducing me already, but perhaps in a little bit more detail. I'd like to share that I've been a yoga instructor for 6 years, and I've been practicing yoga for 17 years. I found it really early when I was a kid. There was a Parks and Rec program in Toronto, and I started learning yoga in the lunchroom of a school, and it just kind of really resonated with me, and it's something I've been pursuing ever since. I'm also the first in my family to attend university, and that brought its own unique set of challenges and stresses my way. And I found throughout my undergrad and my other degrees, I really leaned in my yoga practice. There were yoga clubs that I participated in on campus, and I appreciated having those clubs around because as a student, I didn't have a lot of spare money to go to any expensive studios. When I got to library school at the University of Toronto, I was really pleased to discover the iRelax program in the Inforum Library. So that's the library school library. And this was just a borrowing program for a bunch of yoga props. So I walked into the library and I saw there were yoga mats and blocks and cushions. And I had this feeling of welcome that I hadn't had in other academic spaces before. It really felt like, wow, this space, the people here, they care about me in a way that extends beyond my role as a researcher or as a student. And I really wanted to kind of carry that forwards as I've moved through library school and now the early start of my library career. I'm really eager to share mindful strategies and movements that have helped me both as a student and as a librarian. So my big goal here is to humanize the academic library going forward. I've been a librarian for about 2 years now. And as much as I want to support the research that's being conducted using library resources, I'm really eager to support the researcher as a whole, not just the work that's being done, but the person who is doing that work. So what is library yoga itself? Library yoga is yoga designed to be done in any kind of clothing, in any kind of space, with any kind of experience. It's really meant to be as broadly accessible as possible. It's designed by a certified instructor, in this case, me. I thought that was quite important because I don't want anyone to be accidentally injuring themselves through the process of doing some yoga. And it was crafted very intentionally to address common points of physical and mental stress in students, in researchers, in library workers. This could include maybe tension in your back, your shoulders, your neck, feelings of overwhelm if you're in the middle of the research process. All of the postures and approaches and conversations happening throughout this program are really intended to address those particular points. And these were done through a combination of live sessions and recordings on YouTube. Now, you might be thinking, yoga libraries, they still don't totally fit in my mind. And this is where I will invite you to practice with me just for a minute or two. So I'm going to slide my chair back a little bit here. And if you'd like to participate, totally optional, I would invite you to sit towards the edge of your chair, sitting up nice and tall, taking your shoulders back. You can just rest your hands down on your legs. Take a nice deep breath in and sigh it out. On your next inhale, squeeze your shoulders up towards your ears, and exhale, drop them down. One more time, inhale, and exhale, drop them down. Now on your next inhale, maybe gently start to lift the chest, take the shoulders back, maybe take the gaze up if it feels good. And as you exhale, round it back. You can slide your hands forwards along your legs. Once more, inhale, we lift it up, open up through the chest, and exhale, round it back. We'll come on up to a nice straight seat. We'll cross the left hand over towards the right leg, bringing the right fingertips either behind you on your seat or perhaps on your chair, twisting a little bit towards the right, not cranking too much here, using your core to really twist you here. Take a deep breath in. And exhale, we'll switch, twisting the other direction very gently. Deep breath in. And release. And we'll continue from here, but hopefully, if you take a moment now just sitting in your seat, maybe you feel a little looser, a little lighter, perhaps you've been sitting at your desk for quite some time already today. A lot of these stretches I've sort of brought into library yoga with the intent of sharing them as practices people can carry with them throughout the day. So maybe you find your back is getting a little tight, maybe you want to twist a little during the day, it's okay to do that. And that's one way that you can approach that. So classes like these, they'd involve lots of movements like that. There's many options to do postures either seated or standing or sometimes even reclined on the floor, but it's not really mandatory to do it in any particular way. I really want people to make the practice their own. A lot of these postures and these sessions were run during lunch hours. They were run on Wednesdays for just half an hour. They started at 12:15, ran until 12:45. So it was in the middle of that lunch hour. There wasn't any required change of clothes, so it was easy to squish into the day. And it was run at targeted points of the term so that there were sessions offered during times of transition and times of stress. So you can see here, I offered usually 3 classes. So that would be 3 weeks in a row during the first month of the term, that welcome season. And then I would run a couple of sessions during the fall and winter midterms and a couple of sessions around finals. So on average, there were about 7 sessions per term, but there were some extra sessions that happened. So I also devised some library yoga shorts. These were 2 to 5 minute recordings that I put straight up onto our YouTube channel. I also partnered with the Student Wellness and Accessibility Center to run an Instagram interview with them for one of their Wellness Wednesdays. And I did a couple of Night Against Procrastination special events. So this is a special night-long event. It runs from 6 p.m. until midnight. That's run through A to Z Learning Services. This is a learning skills group on campus, sort of adjacent to the library. And so I was able to run a couple of sessions with them as well. And library yoga really has fostered a number of partnerships with various groups on campus. It's been really great for bringing people together, but we'll hear more about that later. These events were all promoted on our campus digital event hub called Experience BU. So any event happening on campus usually has a link on Experience BU so that people can register directly online for the sessions. These were also later pushed to students through the Get Involved newsletter linked to Experience BU. They were also shared on social channels by the library and by some of our partners. So you can see some of the fun, colorful images that I designed for this program. This was just done in Canva. We also included updates to faculty and our personal librarian emails that went out directly to students. We would mention these programs were running. And whenever I was invited to give a guest lecture in classes, I would frequently mention that, hey, I'm also a yoga instructor. We also run these fun events. And it was a really cool way of connecting with students on a more personal level instead of a more instruction, intense research librarian level. So again, the program itself was about half an hour long every single time. Discussions would center around mindful awareness of the body, maintaining balance in periods of stress, how to bring a mindful outlook to the academic work that we're doing, and also maintaining equilibrium in the face of uncertainty, because that comes up a lot too as a student and as a researcher. You're not quite sure where things are going. So much of the conversation was linked to experiences that we would have when we are in the library or doing our academic work. After each session, I would send an email out to participants, updating them about the next session where they could sign up. And I'd also provide the link to our YouTube channel, because after each session, by the end of the week, I would upload our recording and I would update the captions. So it's totally accessible. People can do them on their own time. So that sort of summarizes the program itself. One final detail that I think I forgot to mention earlier is that in these sessions, to make people feel as comfortable as possible, I ensured I was the only one appearing on the screen. I hosted this through a platform called Lifesize. So I was able to run the event in lecture mode. So I could see that there were other participants. They had absolutely no reason to put their camera on at all. It was optional for them to leave their microphone on. So if they wanted to ask for clarification during the session, they were able to do so. But I was always the only one who would appear on the screen. Okay, now we can dive into the research survey, because as I mentioned at the start, I was really eager to know what kind of impact this programming was having on the community. So I got my ethics approval and I started this survey in January 2021, publishing my results in July. So it's been about a year almost since this was published. In my survey, I had 14 total participants. Most of these were undergraduate students, which I kind of expected, but I really appreciated that I did have a faculty member participating, a staff member, and some librarians as well. So this was open to everyone. There were 3 emerging themes that came from this survey. One was stress relief, another was community building, and finally, there was an advocacy and outreach component as well. So to dive into stress relief first, I asked participants, what drew you to library yoga? And this is a word cloud generated from their responses. And we can see stress and break, needing a break, really, really crucial here. So all survey participants indicated that they were stressed. You can see here how they ranked their stress. It was very stressed, stressed, and moderately stressed. But perhaps more interesting, 13 out of the 14 participants indicated that their stress levels were different from previous years, and that this was either definitely or probably related to their experience of the COVID-19 pandemic. Because again, I started running this program in September 2020. So this was during the peak of everything being super, super virtual. Now, I also asked, has library yoga impacted your stress levels? And 8 people said, yes, it impacted it. And it was impacting it positively, I should clarify. So you can see here a few snippets. Library yoga decreases the amount of stress that I feel in the moment and throughout that day. It allows me to take time to myself, away from my studies, to relax. It made me feel better physically and mentally. And perhaps my favorite of all of them, I feel more relaxed and refreshed, prepared to learn. That is the goal of library yoga. I will say the one participant who said that they did not feel that library yoga made a difference in their stress levels said specifically that they only feel stress relief from really vigorous, intense exercise. And library yoga is not meant to be competing with fitness classes or other studio yoga classes. It's very much designed to be a gentle do anywhere practice with the goal of making you feel more relaxed, more prepared to learn, more ready to engage with your academic work. Now, community building was another theme here, and this surprised me because, again, I was the only one appearing on camera here. People weren't interacting with each other directly. But as you can see with some of these snippets taken from the survey, people still felt connected because they were participating in this together. Even though they couldn't see each other, they knew they were a part of a group who were participating in this activity. They really enjoyed this shared experience. They liked joining in, being a part of the community. And they liked being able to do it virtually because, of course, nothing was really happening in person at the time. Interestingly, a lot of people also were really happy that it was done anonymously. They didn't want to be participating in a large group of people, either on screen or in person, while practicing yoga. They really enjoyed that anonymity while also coming together as a community. And in terms of advocacy and outreach, the program was directly linked to the Brock University Library's strategic plan and its priority of fostering student success. through library yoga, I was able to make myself more approachable to a lot of students and able to do so in new ways. I was able to connect with students either as a librarian first and then as a yoga instructor, or as a yoga instructor and then a librarian. The two kind of started to blend together. I was teaching a research workshop in a class, and I had a student follow up with me later to run a yoga session for their student club. And then in their student club, I ran the yoga session and also provided some library Q&A. It was a really interesting way of generating some more organic conversations with a bunch of students. And it was a recurring theme that the interactions that I had with participants in library yoga really helped them, as you can see here, to learn about what librarians are and what they do, because the conversations always revolved around things that were academically relevant or relevant to the library. And this helped to bust some stereotypes as well, and I would hope to reduce some library anxiety. We can see here in this orange box on the left that this really transcended negative stereotypical images of what a library is and what librarians are. So this helps this particular participant see a different side of the library and librarians. I thought that was really, really cool. So this is just one other word cloud generated from the question, is there anything else you'd like to share about your experience with library yoga? And I was really, really touched that instructor was the biggest word here, and with so many positive connotations floating around it. This emphasis on the instructor speaks to the connection that was being forged between the librarian and the participants. I feel really lucky to have been able to undertake this dual role where I could be participating in both roles. So a lot of positive feedback has been received. People want to keep it going. And at the bottom right here, it's even inspired people to take some of their wellness initiatives into their own hands. So someone else purchased their own yoga mat and they've started doing YouTube yoga lessons, which is fantastic. Now, it's been about a year since the survey, and I have been running library yoga since then. So I wanted to touch on just a couple of things that I've learned since then before we wrap up today. So the first thing that I've learned, and this has been consistent through all of library yoga, the 2 years that I've been running it, attendance is always highest at the start of the term and not at the end of the term. Often we sort of beef up our wellness offerings at the end of the term when students are stressed and their schedules are jam-packed with exams, but most interest came at the very start of the term. So I think maybe having welcome events is really valuable, maybe teaching some skills that people can carry with them throughout the year. I also learned that there was a bit of a split interest between virtual sessions and in-person sessions. Half of informal survey participants wanted to continue just doing virtual things, even with the possibility of coming together in person. I also made use of online polling tools. So to bolster that sense of community, I would always run a Mentimeter poll at the start of all of my yoga sessions for this past year. So just a quick way to check in with people anonymously, but still pulling people together. It seemed to be quite successful. And I was really happy after some greater university news promotion. So finding new ways to promote with a larger outreach. There was an increased number of faculty who started participating. And this was originally designed for students, but open for everyone. And I was really pleasantly surprised by faculty interest. I had a couple of regulars who would come and they began sharing the recordings with their students as well. Now, as we move towards the future, we want to undertake more wellness programming, perhaps. I would just say this is proof of concept. There is a place for wellness in the library. Virtual and possibly in-person yoga classes are of interest. And I think these could lead to other opportunities in the future as well. I think a great future project could be a new lending program for resources like mats and yoga blocks. And just as an example of a passive program that we ran at the end of this past term, we passed out encouragement cards during exam season. These had some chair yoga illustrations, some breathing exercises, and just a cute, you can do it bit of encouragement, all linking on the reverse to our exam survival guide. So when student schedules are packed, maybe they don't need any active programming, but just some passive programming. Leave these out in the library and on their own time. If they want to pursue some stretches, if they want to check out our exam survival guide, they can do so. And continuing programming like this, I think, is really possible with partnerships. I feel very lucky that I happen to be a yoga instructor and a librarian, but I think similar programs could be developed with the recreation team or whoever works in your local gym, the student wellness and accessibility center, or even community yoga studios. I think these are all great options. And I mean, it doesn't even have to be yoga. I think similar programming that gets people maybe moving a little bit, making a little bit more of a mind-body connection, even though libraries tend to be spaces where we are just in our minds, just doing research. I think organizing a walking group, leaving some maybe encouragement or stretch cards around the library could be really great. Or for something completely different, maybe a crafting group. I think all of these ideas can bring people together, show that it's okay to take some breaks when you're in the middle of an intense workspace. It's important to do so. And also allow them to forge connections with people. That sense of community was really important. So that just about wraps up my presentation here. I'm excited to have a bit of a conversation with you after, if not my presentation, perhaps after both of the presentations this morning. And I'll just say I listed a little bit of related reading at the end of my slides when they are up and accessible for you. These are great resources if you're looking to plan some similar programming in your own library. So thank you so much. I'll go ahead and stop sharing my presentation.
Thank you so much, Chelsea. That was excellent, and I really appreciated having some exercises and doing some yoga during your session. That was great. We are able to take some questions now to Chelsea. So we have about, I think, 7 minutes for questions. So we are monitoring Q&A. So please submit your question into the Q&A, and then okay, so here we go. We have the first question from Susan. Thank you for your presentation, Chelsea. Have you considered hybrid yoga in the library? Is that even possible?
Oh, that's an interesting idea. Thank you, Susan. So I know our limitation was with the space itself, how that would work. We don't have any hybrid classrooms in the library as it stands. But I know that there are some other spaces, and I think that's totally a doable thing. It would depend on where the camera is set up, because I think valuing people's privacy is really important. So if anyone comes to practice in person, I would want to ensure still that they're not going to be on camera. But I don't think that precludes having the camera on at all. I think if you have a good pair of headphones so people can hear you no matter where you are, and you have a camera so that you're the only one visible on screen, I think anybody could be participating in the room and virtually. And again, encouraging people to keep their cameras off, I think that's a totally doable thing. And I'd be so excited to test that out in the future. I think that's a great idea.
Thank you, that's great. While we're waiting for more questions to come up, I have a quick question for you as well. I was wondering if the timing of your sessions were aligned with a period of exams or like stressful time, or did you kind of had a specific approach to timing your sessions throughout the semester?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Thank you. I really felt strongly about running sessions during that first month of each term. So I know the first week I kind of left alone because I know students are trying to figure out, okay, what's my schedule? I need to buy books, what's going on? But starting for that second week, that second, third, fourth week, every Wednesday consistently, I would run those sessions. And those, again, were the highest attended of everything. But then, yeah, I was looking around, like for the winter term, for example, I would do a session before reading week and a session after reading week, because I figured students have midterms either going on that first week before reading week or after reading week. So maybe they can't attend the first one, but they want to attend the second, or vice versa, or maybe both if they're really stressed out. I really tried to align that. And then at the end of the term, it was always the last 2 weeks of the term before exam season started. because I know around exams, students are really only coming into campus if they need to study or if they're actually writing an exam. So people probably aren't going to have a whole ton of free time they're ready to devote either to coming into the library or practicing virtually. So I tried, while everyone's schedules are still stable with classes going on and everything, to offer the sessions in those time slots. And Wednesday lunch hours, it was kind of randomly chosen at the start. I knew a Monday and a Friday probably wouldn't be a good idea because schedules are kind of weird on Mondays and Fridays. They tend to be. So I thought middle of the week, middle of the day, let's see how it goes. And it seemed to work. I ran some informal polls as well with some of the regular participants to see what time slots they would prefer. And that ended up being the most popular one. So it kind of just fell into place that way. And I was very glad for it.